Editor of factcheck.org, and she joins us tonight from Washington, D.C. Lori, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
So tell us just a little bit about factcheck.org, if you will. For some reason, I can't get it out today, and what it does and why it is an important service for all Americans, really. It's a website, and you're housed at the Annenberg Center.
Sure. Yeah, factcheck.org, we were launched in 2003, before the 2004 presidential election, and we are a project of the Annenberg Public Policy Center at the University of Pennsylvania. Our funding overwhelmingly comes from the Annenberg Foundation, and we consider ourselves to be a consumer advocate to help voters make sense of the messages and misleading claims that are coming at them. We take a look at mainly political ads, but also speeches, debates, other forms of communication, Twitter, Facebook pages of politicians, and write about claims that aren't so true.
You know, when you first started, actually, your job has actually gotten harder, because when you first started, Facebook and Twitter and all of these social media sites that you're talking about weren't actually as prevalent, and now it's, in some cases, one of the main ways that politicians communicate with the public.
Yeah, definitely. And even, you know, when we were first started, web ads were not as prevalent as they are now, so we're seeing some web-only ads and videos that are released in addition to things that you see on TV and hear on the radio.
So there's one ad in particular that I'm really interested in starting with. It actually is being run by a political action committee that was started by our former governor, George Pataki. His PAC is called Revere America. Let's just take a look at that.
Congressman Hall voted for Obamacare, government-run health care. It's a bad plan. Government bureaucrats will benefit. Seniors will get hurt. Costs will go up, care will go down. Longer waits in doctor's offices. Your right to keep your own doctor may be taken away. It's a plan we didn't want and don't need, but Hall voted for it anyway. Defeat Congressman Hall. Revere America is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Okay, so that's pretty scary. I think if I were just your average viewer and I saw that, it would really scare the bejesus out of me. And John Hall, we should say, is in a fairly tight race against Nan Hayworth, a newcomer Republican. According to the most recent poll, he is 3 percentage points behind her. But this PAC is also airing some ads in New Hampshire. And you guys have said that they are bogus. Why is that?
Yes. Well, I mean, you'll notice that the ad also makes some very, very general claims. So one of the first things we do when we fact-check ads is contact the organization behind it and ask for the support for the claims. And they list studies or reports or other things as support. But for this ad, the claims like longer waits in doctor's offices and your right to keep your own doctor could be taken away, Revere America didn't actually cite any kind of study or report that said that the health care law would lead to that. Instead, they cited an opinion piece about what's called accountable care organizations. And this is a new Medicare payment model that the new law is going to implement to try to improve care and reduce costs. The problem, however, is that this opinion piece that they pointed to is by a healthcare expert who doesn't think these accountable care organizations are a good idea, doesn't think that they'll reduce costs, but he didn't say anything about care being impacted, about your ability to keep your doctor or longer waits in doctor's offices. He didn't say that at all. And when we contacted him to say, hey, your article is being used as support for this ad, he said that that was bogus, that that's not what he said in his article at all.
You know, here's the problem, though, and there's all this information, and your website has so much information. In fact, just this particular ad, this one ad that we're talking about, this Revere America ad, it prints out to be like 5 pages. But when you say you find this ad has no basis in fact, there's actually nothing that you can do about it.
Yeah, and you know, that's one of the sort of challenges and obstacles that we have to kind of get our articles and our what we've said about ads out there. It's real easy to make a misleading claim. You can do that in a matter of seconds, and then for us to explain, here's what's behind it, here's why this isn't true, as you said, takes us 5 pages of written words. So it's a challenge for us to reach voters and get our message out there that, hey, this claim isn't true.
Well, another thing about this particular political action committee is that it's a 501c4, which is a tax status code. But because of the recent decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, this organization can get donations, and then not disclose them. Is that something that you guys are seeing more of?
It sure feels like it. We haven't released any kind of statistics or measurements of are we seeing more of these types of groups now than we were in the past, but it certainly seems like it. And the Supreme Court decision that you referred to basically released or got rid of restraints on corporate and union spending in federal elections. So corporations and unions are free to spend from their general treasuries as much as they'd like in elections. And the other thing that Supreme Court decision did was say that issue ads from corporations and unions could run 60 days before election, and that actually overturned something that was in the McCain-Feingold Act. So we feel like we're definitely seeing a lot more ads from these groups.
Before we leave Revere America, it's interesting because George Pataki said Revere America, quote, is not a partisan organization, but it is a policy organization. And oddly, though, those ads seem awfully political.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of groups like that saying the same thing. A lot of these groups that we've written about will say, well, we're not a partisan organization. Well, I guess viewers can be the judge of that. They're certainly airing partisan ads.
Okay, we have another ad that I'd like to take a look at. This one made news earlier this week, and I've actually referenced it on the show before. It is an ad that Bill Owens is running. He's a Democrat in New York 23, and he is under attack because it's a fairly conservative district for voting too much of the time with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. According to the Republicans, he is voting with her over 90% of the time, and he ran an ad seeking to debunk that claim. Let's take a look at that.
I'm Bill Owens, and I approved this message.
Wall Street people sure know how to lie with numbers. Bill Owens didn't vote with Nancy Pelosi 93% of the time. He voted with the Republican leader 63% of the time. And Bill Owens strengthened Medicare with better prescription drug coverage. Matt Doheny wants to replace Medicare with private vouchers and reduce benefits. He promoted it with his own money. And Matt Doheny said he wants to cut Social Security benefits too. Matt Doheny won't stand up for us.
Okay, so the first thing that strikes me about this ad is it is a perfect example of what one can do with numbers. It's all, what is it, facts, liars figure, and figures lie, or something like that? Anyway, I think it's numbers that are often in the eye of the beholder. Mm-hmm. So,
yes, and this ad, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please, continue.
Well, with this ad, it is true, the numbers come from opencongress.org, and that group lists votes that members of Congress have made. This is public information, and other groups have websites that compile it as well. And he has voted with John Boehner, House Minority Leader, 63% of the time, as he said, but he also voted with Nancy Pelosi 85% of the time. The 93% figure, that's actually how often he has voted with the Democratic Party. So you can go on the website and see how often a member's votes have been similar to any other member and come up with these numbers.
Yeah, the problem here, of course, is that particularly around now, we're coming so close to the election, that voters, particularly TV viewers, are deluged with information, and it would take so much time, right, to just inform yourself, which is where an organization like yours comes in. But what do you recommend to people who are trying to figure out where the fact lies in all of this sort of subterfuge?
Mm-hmm. Well, we hope that people will visit our website, but we're just one organization, and it's tough for us to cover all of the ads that people are getting hit with in the midterm elections. But other local media are also doing a good job of fact-checking ads these days. And then, I mean, you can look into it yourself. With that ad, opencongress.org, it really just took me a few minutes to double check that information. Other things are much more complicated and aren't something that you could just spend a few minutes looking up. But I'm hoping that factcheck.org, our colleagues at politifact.com, and other local media who have really stepped up the fact-checking efforts can be a resource for voters.
Can you think of anything in particular, or the most egregious thing that you've seen in terms of factually incorrect ads this election cycle?
Oh, goodness. I don't know if I could name one thing that's the most egregious, and part of that's a bit of a matter of opinion. One thing that's super egregious to someone is, us being nitpicky to someone else, so it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. But we've definitely seen some big themes from the parties. A lot of Democratic candidates are claiming their Republican opponents want to privatize Social Security, and that's either outright false, depending on the candidate, or highly misleading. They normally are in favor of voluntary accounts for younger workers who could invest a portion of their Social Security taxes in private funds. On the Republican side, we're seeing false claims about the health care bill, as we've talked about. Another big thing is saying that the stimulus didn't create jobs. In fact, it did, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. So we're definitely seeing a lot of themes from the parties across the country.
Well, Lori Robertson, it's very kind of you to come by and help us make sense of it all. I'm sure that a lot of people are thankful that there are organizations like yours, since we are seeing so many political ads and Facebook pages and web ads and tweets. So I want to thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.